Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Brett Wetzel from Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. Tonight, we're actually doing a live stream from ATI Refrigeration Technical School. Tonight, the QA, we're going to do it for a little bit of time. Anthony Guzman, the owner of ATI Refrigeration, has been nice enough to give us some shirts and some hats. And basically, what we're going to do tonight is anyone that asks any questions, we're going to end up, giving out hats and shirts. So if anyone's asking any of the questions, make sure you do put your name, email address, and contact information, or direct message me on Facebook. That way I can actually send out, send you guys a hat or a shirt, also with your size. So if anyone has any questions tonight, feel free to start asking. Like I said, ATI Refrigeration, that's where I'm at tonight, where it's in the City of Industry, California. Like I said, tonight, anyone that's going to ask any questions gets a complimentary hat or shirt. Just make sure you put all the information either in the comments or, put a message on the Advanced Refrigeration Facebook group or directly DM me. So if anyone has any questions, let's get started, guys. This week, I'm actually out in California, teaching a level 6 class out in Fullerton, California. It's been a good class this week. Tomorrow, everyone goes for their testing, and that's what I've been up to this week. Kevin got it home tonight, so he wasn't going to join, but he says hello. Anything else going on? What's everyone doing up to tonight? Yep, level 6. Yeah, so Coolsys has 7 levels. Basically, you take a test when you first get here, and that decides your placement, and then you have the availability to go to some of our classes and get trained in one of our 3 facilities down in Fullerton, California, over in Jacksonville, Florida, or in Houston, Texas. So just to let you guys know, if you guys didn't hear it first, ATI Refrigeration shirts and ATI Refrigeration hats to anyone that asks any questions tonight. So, man, any question you guys can think of, let's get started, guys. Bueller. Come on, guys. You know what? Since someone's asking a question, Anthony, you want to come over here? So just talk right in the microphone. This is Anthony Guzman. He's the one that started ATI Refrigeration because he was tired of some of these schools not doing their job and actually teaching the guys stuff. Tell people about the school.
All right, so I started at Source back in early 2000s. We had the training program. Went out in the field with all the upper level guys. Got hand trained by most of the upper level guys out here in California. Watched other guys in the trade, not learning anything, not doing anything, not able to fix anything because nobody was showing anybody anything. So went over to Hussman for a couple years and tried to recruit from schools, and nobody was teaching anything. So we couldn't get anybody out of those schools. So that's why we started our school, to give the students a better opportunity and actually teach them what you guys need out there.
You want to give a description about what you guys teach, how long your program is?
So we started off with a 10-month course, but we found it's a little too much for everybody. There's not enough information in there to get you guys going, or it's just too much time. So we broke it down to a 5-month course, 20 weeks, 16 hours a week. We're giving you guys commercial refrigeration, commercial air conditioning, controls, electrical, breaking it down in simple form. Everything you guys need coming out of here: brazing, dissimilar metals, everything.
So later, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some pictures up on the Advanced Refrigeration podcast Facebook group of some pictures of his facility. I'll put his email address and contact information up there if you guys are interested. How long? You said how long is the course?
It's 20 weeks.
So, yeah, I highly recommend it. The guys out here, they build all their trainers out here. So, they have some Danfoss stuff. They have some E2 stuff, Ketotherm stuff, and some walk-ins, and every bit of information, every bit of equipment that they've put up, all the students have actually built. So it's an extremely hands-on school. What's your placement that you actually have with the school currently?
Right now we have a 95% placement with big contractors, cities, unions, hotels. We got guys on the refrigeration team at SoFi Stadium when they just opened. Everywhere, we're all over the place. So I mean, yeah, everybody's picking up the students right now.
And you guys have been running for how long now?
We're going on our third year right now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How many graduates have you had?
Over 300.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Anthony, I appreciate you coming on and answering some questions. I'm gonna get started with the live cast.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, boss.
Appreciate it. Do I get a hat?
Yeah, you get a hat. What do I find about rewarding about my position within CoolSys? Man, I really dig the fact that that they hold training in such high regard, and I love the fact when you see the light bulb go on someone's eyes where basically they understand something that they didn't understand before. That's training the next generation of technician. That's one of the rewarding things that I do about my job. Does your company have a presence in Georgia? Yes, we do. CoolSys has, I know they have an office right outside Atlanta. They do, I think we're in, almost every state except for 2 now. I think we're the biggest contractor in North America, to be honest with you. Look what I found. I don't know. What did you find? Like I said, if you're joining a little bit late tonight, ATI Refrigeration is giving us hats and shirts to give out to any of the guys out there, girls out there that ask any questions tonight. Michigan, man, I think, yeah, I believe we're in Michigan.
Any of you guys got a question?
You want a shirt?
Question for Brett?
Anybody?
You guys want to know anything?
What's up?
Are you a journeyman? Because if you are, then how long did it take you to?
So I've never been with a union company. I originally started. I actually originally went to school for electronical engineering, and basically I hated what I was doing. So I got a job doing water treatment for industrial cooling towers and boilers, and I thought that was really cool. And then after that, I basically started working for a residential company. Worked my way up to doing commercial. Then worked my way up to doing industrial refrigeration. Did that for a couple of years. Moved up to Connecticut and opened or helped run a EMS department out of Connecticut. And then when I realized how much I hated snow, I ended up moving down to Texas. I've been doing refrigeration, including the electronics degree, if you count that, about 18 years. So I've been in the industry for a little bit. If you want a shirt, man, ask a question, brother.
Anybody else?
Anybody?
Anybody? They want to know how to get in the trade, where you guys should start.
How'd you get started in industrial?
So I worked for an air compressor company for a little bit, and I had already had a refrigeration background. So basically when I applied, the only thing I had to learn was, how the compressors worked with the refrigeration. Best things you could do is look up Ciro, CIRO, or RITA. They have a lot of courses that you can do in your spare time, and basically, learn up about a lot of that stuff. RITA is extremely involved. Refrigeration Engineering Technician Association, I believe it is. They have 4 or 5 books that you basically go through, and they teach anything from sizing based off of BTUs to explaining, industrial refrigeration. Because there's little things that are different, like especially with ammonia. Normally when you have liquid refrigerant, right? Liquid refrigerant and regular refrigerants, oil will sit on the top of liquid refrigerant. And then in industrial, in ammonia, basically it'll be the opposite. The refrigerant is actually lighter than the refrigerant oil, probably because of the weight. It's a lot thicker of an oil. So, those are some of the differences, a lot of the safety stuff. But, one of the things I can recommend to guys out there that are trying to learn when you're out in the field, look up something about whatever job that you're on, something that you didn't know about before. Look up maybe one component and read a little bit about it, because one time at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to need to know what the hell that thing did. You know what I mean? So the best thing is just, instead of looking at midget porn and Facebook, I would recommend, just one thing a week, man. That's all it takes. And then, basically you'll know what every single component does in that system. That's my recommendation.
Hey, Brett, I got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's say you get a service call, like you have customer complaining about not enough air or it's not cool enough.
Yeah.
Like, how would you go about? Would you of course, check the charge, right? But would you do like the subcooling and superheat just to?
So start off with airflow, right? I mean, if you don't have enough airflow, I mean, all the rest of the system isn't going to work properly. So if you look up on the board, I wrote something up there. There's a triangle up there where it has airflow, SST, and superheat. And basically, if all the things work out to where they're supposed to be, that system should basically work out. So if you check the airflow and the airflow is straight, the SST, meaning whatever saturated you're supposed to be running. So if you're speaking of air conditioning, right, we run usually a 38 degree, 40 degree saturated suction temperature, right? And then your superheat, air conditioning, 12 to 15 degrees. Right. With all three of those things, if you have all three of those things, technically you should be operating properly, right? If not, one of those three things is messed up, whether it be airflow, too high of a suction pressure because you have too high of a load, too high of a superheat, or too low of a superheat. Basically break everything down to make sure that, break it down to manufacturer spec. You call any manufacturer out there and they're basically going to tell you, okay, you should have this much airflow, you should have this much superheat, this is what your pressure should be running. And, that's how I basically run every single call. If the engineer, if the manufacturer said that it was supposed to run like this, then that's the way it should be running, unless we have some kind of, outside interference. Maybe you have infiltration on the return, up in the attic, where basically it's sucking in hot air.
Like the wet bulb temperature from the return.
Yeah, and just make sure, because they're going to also tell you what the TD is supposed to be from return and supply, right?
Right.
So typically, air conditioning system, you have 75 degree on the return temp typically, and usually about 52, 53 degrees on the discharge air. And if I'm measuring higher than that, then I know, I have something else going on.
Right.
So, I always, like I said, I always break it down to manufacturer spec. Because like I said, if it was supposed to run like that and they have 400,000 other units that are supposed to be running like that, I'm going to try to get it to there first. If I get everything down to spec, then there's something outside weird that's just totally just wrong that might be causing it, whether it be, flattened duct or whatever, some kind of infiltration.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's your take on students coming out of school with a NATE or the HVAC excellence certificates?
I guess if you're doing residential, I think NATE is decent to learn. But if you're going into like commercial refrigeration, I don't think I know of any commercial company that really even holds any regard in NATE. Yeah. If you're thinking about doing residential HVAC, I think NATE's probably a really good thing, because it gives you a lot of extra things to learn. Never stop learning. That's one of the things that's helped me, basically, get far in the industry is basically just personal development. Never stop learning, never stop reading. I read all the time, because there's new technologies that comes out every single day. And, you're never going to know everything, but you can be ahead of the curve by, trying to, right? What's the hardest thing about teaching new and upcoming techs? Probably, making sure, they understand the basics, and, trying to work with them, and you don't want them to get frustrated. You basically, just making sure that they fully understand everything, and, just have a lot of patience with them, to make sure that you don't get frustrated and they don't get frustrated. Does your company offer training on the Emerson E2 hardware, software, and overall architecture of the entire system? If so, how do I access training? You have to work for CoolSys for the training. I'm trying to work on some modules for EMS. That's still in the infantile stage, but I'm working on it. When do you have time for yourself, bro? You're always on the go. I'm out of town this week, so I'm just, if I'm away from the family already, I mean, I'm either going to go home, go back to the hotel room and watch Tiger King 2, or I can, actually do some shit out in the field. You know what I mean? Hey, if any of you guys are asking questions, make sure you put your send me a message with your contact information. ATI Refrigeration is giving me shirts and hats to give away. So if you guys want a shirt or a hat, give me your size and send it to me. What do I think about microthermal? Man, microthermals, I really like their system. Their case controlling algorithms are, above all else. A lot of problems that we have is, especially with case controller, you have electronic expansion valves that the smallest one they have is maybe like 1.5 tons or a ton. And then you have some of these smaller cases that are basically only a 1/4 ton. So basically, you have these oversized expansion valves. So making sure that those case controllers are adjusting the superheat properly and precisely, so there's not so much overstep on the valves, and microthermal does that extremely well. Can you explain how to set superheat with a blend refrigerant? So setting superheat with a blend refrigerant, you don't necessarily have to worry about the midpoint. You basically just do it off of dew point. When setting up on a glided refrigerant or a blended refrigerant, it's recommended that you set it per the midpoint. Because what will happen is, like, if you're trying to set up a subcooler, right, and the TD on the heat exchanger is 10 degrees. If you set it for actual physical 10 degree using a glided refrigerant, what's going to end up happening is you're going to overshoot. It's actually going to be a lot colder. So always set up, your EPRs, your suction group on the compressors for midpoint. And like I said, EPR settings, always set them for midpoint so you don't overshoot your set point. Why do you think not as many stores are going to microthermal? I don't know. You'd have to ask the stores. I mean, a lot of things have to do with integration. Microthermal does have really good integration, but I mean, a lot before it was, you had a refrigeration controller and an HVAC controller. And now, companies basically want, a lot of people just to, basically control everything. And microthermal does do that. But a lot of people are, catching up on as well as that as well. Email address is advanced refrigeration at Gmail. Refrigeration podcast at gmail.com. Advanced refrigeration at refrigeration podcast at gmail.com. What do I think about microthermal? They do have speaking of microthermal, they do have some demo stuff out there. You can basically, run a demo and see how the thing operates. If you get a hold of microthermal, they should be able to give you a copy of that. Can you break down the refrigeration cycle for us? Yeah, sure. Basically, you start off with the compressor, and all the compressor is basically doing is, moving the refrigerant through the system. From there, we're at a superheated vapor, high temperature, high pressure, and basically goes to the condenser. Condenser is basically going to remove the superheat from the discharge line and actually bring it below its saturation point. Usually, most condensers usually give you about 5 degrees of subcooling coming out. And then from there, we go over to usually a filter dryer, sight glass, and then some sort of expansion device, whether it be a cap tube. It could be an expansion valve, electronic expansion valve. And then after that goes through the evaporator. Once it goes in the evaporator basically boils off the refrigerant, adds a little bit of superheat, and basically then goes back to the suction side of the compressor to whatever cool vapor that you actually have. Basically, helps cool down the compressor, and the cycle starts all over again. Do you get to work on any evaporative cooling systems in your area? Texas has a couple. A lot of people are going to the adiabatic condensers, where basically it's almost like an evaporative condenser. The only difference is that the water that typically goes over the tube bundle goes across pads, almost like a humidifier. And basically it drops the dew point of the air to get a little bit more capacity out of there. They usually use them for, potentially dry coolers, to get a little bit more air, especially in hotter environments. They use them for gas coolers for CO2 as well. What new technology are you most excited about that will hit for the industry? It seems like in commercial refrigeration that a lot of times they're dealing with a lot of smaller units, a lot of more precise energy efficient units. Hydrocarbons are really being stepped up. A lot of CO2, a lot of propane. Just the newer technologies that are coming out all the time. Do you have any good sources for looking up online information was stuck in the field, or is Google the go-to? I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. Right? One of my biggest advices is basically, always looking up any parts, especially in a rack house. If you see something, a valve that you've never seen before, download that information about it and basically just read about it. Because at one point in the night, you're going to need to know what the hell that thing was doing. We need more R717 and 744 systems. Man, I mean, unfortunately, ammonia, you're really not going to see, I don't think, in the commercial aspect. I mean, that would be the best system, I think, in my eyes, right? Running, ammonia for a primary and then, CO2 secondary. How do you troubleshoot turboshed Hussmann oil separators? Well, those are typically if they don't have a coalescing filter in there, if it's a true turboshed where it's actually a helical, those things are based off of a discharge CFM. So you have to be running a certain amount of flow around there. Coalescing filters, if they're sized for, let's just say 35 discharge CFM, and there's a way to figure it out. We have there's a YouTube video that we have up, the video that we did with Adam Chapman. You can download, and basically you can see how to actually size the separator. But basically that separator is typically sized, if it's sized for 35 discharge CFM, if it's a helical, you can only go a certain percentage down, like maybe down to like 28 discharge CFM. If you go any lower than that, it's not actually going to separate. And then you're kind of screwed. So, we've had instances where, you can basically downgrade the size of the separator, or better yet, even, put in like a Westermeyer coalescing filter. That way, you can go, even though if it's sized for 35 discharge CFM, you can go all the way down to 2 discharge CFM, and it'll still basically separate. How do you get freeze-on out of glycol? Kevin and I were talking about this tonight. We're gonna have to. I got to talk to him because he said something about shutting down the whole system and basically letting all the glycol warm up to temperature. Because basically it's going to get stuck in the evaporators, basically the braze plate heat exchangers, and by doing that, you're circulating around and not letting the refrigerant stay where it's cold. Basically, have it go out through the system and then purge it off the big air separator. Do you work with any Comtrol system? I used to do a lot of Comtrol when I was back in Connecticut. For the most part, the screens go bad at this point because the systems are real old, and we've did overlays where they basically switch out the main controller and have them controlled by Danfoss. You can also I believe, you can also with an E2 or an E2E, you can also use that controller for the main brain and actually have the control boards on the E2. Blue On, man, I honestly, I need to do more research on Blue On. I've never really dealt with it. Sure, the Inventus electrical mechanical defrost timers are going obsolete. Do the DDC defrost controls such as EMS? Yeah, I mean, because the EMS is a lot more efficient, a lot more precise. I mean, plus you can't graph a gang clock, right? So, I mean, it's a lot easier to see, what ROs were pulled, That was my suggestion for resources. One of the other things, Dick Wertz's book, Refrigeration for Air Conditioning Technicians, is a really good reference. There's a lot of good information in there, especially for people getting in commercial and light commercial. Love to hear a podcast on EnviroGuards. That's on our list, man. We actually we have another Novar one, the other half with Ed Curran. I think we're going to release this week on Sunday. I think we did one with Ketotherm yesterday, so that'll be getting released the week after. And I got to talk to Kevin. We're going to do one on EnviroGuards for sure. Like I said, guys, anyone that posted a question, make sure you send me an email or direct message so I can get you out a shirt, including your size, to make sure everyone gets one. Can you explain transcritical pressures in CO2? Yeah, so typically, those are they're called booster systems. Basically, you have a low temp compressor that is compressing and maintaining a suction pressure of 210 psi. It's actually the discharge of that is actually going into the suction of the medium temp compressors. And then basically having a discharge, about 400, 410. And then basically it gets desuperheated by a liquid injection valve. And then the suction on the medium temp compressors is running typically about, I think, 4 or 410. And then basically the discharge of the medium temps will be as high as, 1,200, 1,300 pounds. Someone's trying to sell me car insurance. Sorry. Never put the damn thing on mute when I'm supposed to. Our digital compressors wear out TX valves because they're choppy suction? No, they would actually do the exact opposite. You have a more solid suction. You would actually have the TX valve wouldn't do so much hunting. There's another reason why you're hunting, whether it be not enough liquid, maybe the valve is oversized. There's a lot of different things that could wear out a TXV. One of the things that actually makes expansion valves not cycle as much is actually having a liquid pressure regulating valve that maintains a certain liquid pressure all the time, and having a subcooler, because basically expansion valves will change size based off of your delta P, which is the pressure between your suction and your liquid. It'll also change size based off your liquid temperature. So basically, if you keep your suction at steady and your liquid pressure steady and your subcooler temperature is steady, basically that valve is going to do less hunting and less cycling. It'll actually be a lot smoother of a line. What's up, boss? On hill rack, oil reservoirs have check valves or differentials. How do you check? Basically, if you have an OCV on the top of the reservoir, what you would do is basically pressurize the reservoir with, discharge pressure, and make sure that the, whatever the OCV is set for, basically add that value to whatever your suction pressure is at. So if your suction pressure is at 50 pounds and your OCV is at 20 pounds, basically, your oil reservoir pressure should be approximately 70 PSI. If it goes lower than that, then basically the check valve is not holding back, which then in fact is going to make your, your oil pressure and your suction pressure the same. So you'll have no flow. If it's staying upwards of discharge pressure, you're not actually going to get any oil out of your separator because there's no way for it to feed from the oil separator to the oil reservoir. What tool brands do you recommend for a starting level tech? Listen, now let me tell you something. So like when I started this, man, I was homeless. I didn't have any money. So I went to Home Depot, I maxed out a credit card, and it basically, bought $2,000 worth of tools. And I started with the basic stuff. I mean, as I went, as something wore out, I would, buy better tools. But I mean, start basic. I mean, no one has the money, right away to just buy all Klein or Snap-on stuff. You know what I mean?
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
So I always recommend to the students, if they're, your tools, basic, whatever.
Yeah.
But once you get down to your electrical stuff, make sure you guys are using Klein or something 1,000-volt insulated that's a really good quality.
Yeah. So I mean, having I agree. So like, but hand tools like, wrenches and sockets and stuff. I mean, I'm not going to go out and buy the best of the best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Once I start making a little bit of money working that overtime, then at that point, then I will. You know what I mean?
Brett, can I touch base on something?
Yeah.
And as far as getting with all the newer advanced technology, I recall going to school, getting out, finishing up. Would you recommend for them to start learning how to check superheat with your analog thermocouple, do the math?
Yes.
Or right away get
Yes.
into a digital? Because you've got guys today that I've seen use some smart probes and it does everything for you.
See, that's
the thought process.
exactly. So I literally, let me tell you something. So I mean, I've been in the industry almost 18 years, and about 2 years ago, I think I bought my first set of digitals. And it was only because, like, I mean, I was so used to like doing the math and, you know what I mean, whatever. And quite honestly, the only reason why I bought them is because I was trying to calibrate a pressure transducer at the controller. And, basically yeah, it was wireless. So I could actually see, I was like, oh, okay, I don't have to keep, running back here, going back and forth, trying to be like, shit, I'm 2 pounds off. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, and I agree with that. Like, I think you should go analog first and do the math because it gets you accustomed to doing that. And honestly, you're cutting the thinking out of it. And then I've had guys where they had stuff hooked up and they're like, yeah, this is what I got. It's not making any sense. I'm like, you either have a severe restriction causing 40 degrees of subcooling and 80 degrees of superheat, or your temperature clamps are backwards. Oh shit. Yeah, you're right. So like, I mean, having to do the math and breaking it down, like it makes you a better technician. You know what I mean? That's what I truly, believe. Are most new market refrigerations of the dual refrigerant loops with a glycol circulating the store with refrigeration? Yeah, I mean, they're still putting in glycol systems. Basically, it's you have usually your TD on your condensers, or I'm sorry, on your evaporators are typically about 7 degrees. So, whatever saturated suction that you're running, let's just say plus 20, you should probably be maintaining about, plus 27 on your glycol temperature. But yeah, no, I've they're still using it really hard. How do you calibrate a Hansen rod? So you have to make sure your range is correct. There's usually a jumper in there, either 1 to 6 volts or 0 to 5 volts. First what you start off is you empty the receiver. When you're emptying the receiver, usually you can only typically achieve this in the colder months because you have to pack all that refrigerant in the condenser. Then what you can do is actually use discharge gas or open up the A9 to basically pressurize and push all that refrigerant out. It also warms it up to help boil it off. Then at that point, once you get down to 0, then basically turn the Z span, which is the 0 span, turn it to, basically get the level down to 0. And then once you get it down to 0, make sure you don't have it too low. And then at that point, then you should be zeroed out. Then what you're going to do is basically open the refrigerant back up from the condenser, let it fill up to about 50% or a level that you can actually see, and make sure it's reading correctly on there. If it's not, then that's when you correct adjust the S span, and that's how you correct the second part of the adjustment. Hey guys, anyone that's asking questions, make sure that you're sending me a message with your address, shirt size, and just making sure I'm getting everything so I can send all these shirts and hats to you guys. If it ain't Klein, it ain't mine. Man, dude, I agree with that. I mean, I really dig Klein, but like I said, when we first starting out, man, I'm not gonna go out and spend $100 for 2 screwdrivers and a pair of linemen's. You know what I mean?
Hey, Brett, we have a question on Instagram.
Yeah.
They're asking if you can explain the refrigeration cycle.
Yeah. I just did. If you want me to do it again.
No, it's all good. I want to make sure that they know that their question was answered.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do I still like doing this job? Absolutely.
Here's one for your client guy.
So whoever asked the client question, Anthony just gave me this. So make sure you send me your contact so I can send that off to you. Hey, so Rookie Refrigeration is asking if I still like this job. Yes, I do. Ruben, I don't understand why it still says Rookie Refrigeration. I thought it should still say Rookie HVAC. You've been changing a lot of filters. On 407A, single air cooled system, should you clear the sight glass or a little bubble? Clear the sight glass. You should, be maintaining, make sure you're not overcharged. You basically should be maintaining typically a 20-degree TD. So whatever your ambient temperature is, you should be maintaining about 20 degrees on top of that, which would give you the accurate saturated condensing temperature. Thoughts on experience with XWeb Evo? You know what? I have one at my house. I've just actually got my my WizMate working, so I can. And that's not what you think. WizMate's a program that you use to communicate with all the Dixel controllers. I'm actually going to play around with that this week. Give me a shirt locally in person. Well, you got to ask a question. Oh wait, do I still like? Okay, all right. I'll bring one home, brother. Shout out to Rookie. It should say Rookie goes home at 3:00. This guy has an addiction to Twin Peaks. I think he actually owns stock in it, to be honest with you. Whenever I'm in town, he's like, hey, let's go to lunch. Where are we going? Twin Peaks. He did last time. Oh, by the way, I took my son, and man, he really dug it over at Twin Peaks. He was ass high with all the waitresses, so he was really digging it. He's 5, by the way. All right, we've been on for about 37 minutes. Any other questions? Shoot them up because I got to let them start school, man. Yeah, go ahead.
So when you start out, you go out with like another experienced tech and whatnot.
Yeah.
About how long did it take till you were comfortable enough to go out on your own and be able to service these machines or whatever you're working on?
Till I was comfortable. And I mean, after 3 weeks, you have to get comfortable, right? I mean, it's. Let me tell you something. I don't know how many times like I'd feel like an ass after a service call. I was like, man, I couldn't figure it out, and basically I would go home. But like when I was going home and looking up information, I was on dial-up, so trying to look up manuals and stuff just took forever. You guys basically have a wireless computer on your belt all the time. You know what I mean? So, it took a little bit. Usually after about 5 years, you get this cockiness where you think you know everything. And shortly thereafter, you get put on your ass and you're like, man, I really don't know shit. So, and it will happen. My advice is stay humble. Stay humble. No one knows everything. Also kiss. Not me. Just keep it simple, stupid. Don't overthink it. It's not always the Einstein, not always the Sherlock Holmes fix, man. It's just keep it simple. Go back to basics. And just break it down simply. Because, sometimes people, they just get so overwhelmed with everything, just basically break it down a little bit. You know what I mean? And just, like I said, personal development is really important. Keep reading. Okay. Just because you graduated here, just because, you've been in the trade 5 years, technology is always changing. Like, I've never worked on an inverter. Like if I worked on a residential system now, I'd be kind of scared. I've never worked on one of their little inverters. I don't know how they work. I know how a VFD works. I can program a VFD. Those little inverters, I have no idea about. I'd have to, I don't work on them. So, I haven't looked at them yet. But at one point, I'm going to have to, right? So you're always learning. What?
Did you ask him about that KT you talked about earlier, the small one?
Which one?
It was just the K2s that they're coming out with, where you have to go ahead and bond the K2 controllers to each other to be able to get it start reading right. But they're the smaller version. They're just the little ones that Husky's coming out with, where they look like a Dixie controller.
Really?
They're
So,
KE2.
so I know there's KE2. They're starting to work real close with Walmart. They're doing ones that are 485 to the Novar. I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't think I've ever seen the smaller ones. I mean, he's, we did an interview with him last night, and he was saying that they're working on a case controller. So like any information that usually when we do a podcast on, a lot of the manufacturers will give us some information. We have an Advanced Refrigeration Podcast Facebook group. I'm going to I got to figure it out how to do it, but we're going to start putting all the information that we're given as well on our Advanced Refrigeration Podcast webpage. What is your method for staging compressors? Man, I let the controller, basically do its deal. I just make sure that, everything is set properly as far as horsepower, unloading. Making sure, the EPRs are feeding all the time. You don't want cycling on those EPRs, especially, they're not supposed to be shutting off and on. They're supposed to be maintaining constant flow, because you keep shutting off those EPRs. What's going to happen is basically you're going to get a warm suction. You get a warmer suction. Basically, your oil temperature is going to be crap. Your discharge temperature is going to be crap. So the name of the game is making sure all those compressors stay cool. Had trouble with my quiz. HVAC problem is leaking TXV. Unable to close, most likely caused by A, frosting, B, high head, C, non-condensables in the condenser, or D, short. HVAC leaking TXV, unable to close fully. I mean, TXVs aren't supposed to close fully. The only time they're basically going to close fully is usually when you lose the charge on the power head.
We got a quick question on that one. We had a problem with that.
What? Go ahead.
What was that question? Roman. What was that question about the compressor or the TXV not closing and short cycling and all that?
Oh, yeah, I think he said it on the question.
Yeah, I was trying to understand the leaking TXV. Are you just, because I mean TXVs aren't supposed to close all the way. That's what I'm confused about.
Well, it's a question on the book that says what happens on a system if the TXV doesn't close fully.
But it's not supposed. Oh, you know what? It's probably talking about a liquid line solenoid, because that's what would cause short cycling. I think that's a typo in the book, man.
Yeah, could be, Brett. Just to let you know, he's gonna read the question right now.
Okay.
Directly from the book.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, boss.
The HVAC problem that is not a leaking TXV unable to close fully is most likely because is misinflamed.
That sounds like a typo, because I mean, like I said, a TXV is not supposed to that's not supposed to close fully, right?
Your option of these is A, corrosion in a water-cooled condenser, B, high head pressure, C, non-condensable in the condenser, or D, short cycling.
Most likely to cause. Man, I'm really thinking it's a typo. So you guys have the access to the answers, right?
Yeah, it says D.
It says short cycling, right?
Yeah.
I'm telling you that's a typo. It's supposed to say solenoid. A TXV doesn't clamp down all the way. It's not supposed to. What?
Yeah, your TFP is always going to modulate.
Damn modern refrigeration. Compression ratio, low temp, HP80, high discharge. What's your superheat? Superheat on any compressor is typically supposed to be above 20 degrees. Optimally, it's supposed to be about 30 to 35. Any higher than that, it's going to cause higher discharge temperature. Either that or you have bad valves. You could do a pump down test and basically test the unit to make sure it's doing a proper pump down test and staying into a vacuum. On parallel racks, why not use mechanical subcooling heat exchangers in the liquid line? They still do. A lot of people are going to electronic because they're, a little bit better of a control, but they still use mechanical with thermostat or mechanical coming from the EMS. Put a dime under the power head, power solved, problem solved. No, it's not. If anyone ever tells you guys to put a dime or a penny under the power head to get the feeding, please don't. And if the power head rubs through, get another power head. Don't put it together and try to braze it and put some pressure on it. Please don't.
What about the quarter and the side glass?
The quarter in the where?
The side glass.
You haven't seen that one yet?
No.
Where the construction guys, when they're doing the retro.
Yeah.
They take the side glasses out, they're putting quarters in them, so just as a joke.
What a jerk. All right, well, guys, listen, I'm going to cut it free so these guys can actually get to learning tonight. I appreciate you guys. Well, hold on. Oh, got more questions. Does Refrigeration Fairy give you a T-shirt if you do the dime trick? No. Bad technician. Don't do that. All right, like I said, guys, make sure you guys are sending me your information if you guys ask the question so I can get you the proper shirt size. Ruben. Yeah, you're going to have to get me your shirt size. You can post it right here if you'd really like. Guys, thanks a lot. I appreciate you guys tuning in. You guys have a good night, man.